This Tuesday,
Thanks for having me.
Greens leader Bandt faces the tough questions
Do you think they're actually going to listen to you?
as his party loses members almost a year after nationwide success.
We don't want to see the Conservatives, the Liberals in power. We are prepared to work with Labor and with independents.
Unedited,
I think you'll see we went through a pretty good and strong process.
unbiased,
Was that view respected by the entire party room?
and uncensored.
What matters at the end of the day is what is the party's policy.
Uncensored. Watch live on the 6 News YouTube channel and subscribe for free. Or head to our website, SIXNewsAU.com.
Good evening everyone, the top stories on 6 News this hour. The Reserve Bank has increased the cash rate by 25 percentage points to 3.6%. The move was in line with expectations after repeated hikes in recent months. It's the highest it's been at since mid-2012. A judge has ruled Sally Rugg cannot keep working for independent MP Monique Ryan while they continue their court case. Justice Deborah Mortimer said there is no real working relationship left between Miss Rugg and Dr. Ryan, and it's unlikely to be restored during the trial process. Rugg started working for the member for Kooyong in July last year and is now in court amid claims of intense working conditions in the MP's office. And nominations are set to close tomorrow for the candidates in the New South Wales state election. At least 13 parties are contesting, while a number of unregistered parties will also be running in both houses. The election is on March 25. And that is 6 News for this hour. There's more news 24/7 on our website, SIXNewsAU.com, and on social media. Just search 6NewsAU to find us. I'm Austin Pollock. More news coverage right after this.
This Tuesday,
Thanks for having me.
Greens leader Bandt faces the tough questions
Do you think they're actually going to listen to you?
as his party loses members almost a year after nationwide success.
We don't want to see the Conservatives, the Liberals in power. We are prepared to work with Labor and with independents.
Unedited,
I think you'll see we went through a pretty good and strong process.
unbiased,
Was that view respected by the entire party room?
and uncensored.
What matters at the end of the day is what is the party's policy.
Uncensored. Watch live on the 6 News YouTube channel and subscribe for free. Or head to our website, SIXNewsAU.com.
Hello, I'm Leonardo Puglisi. You're watching Uncensored right here on 6 News. 1 year ago, the Greens were gearing up for the federal election. Ended up having large success, picking up a number of seats in both houses. But 12 months on from the last time we spoke to 6 News, Bandt is now leading a party that has lost a member, thanks to the resignation of Lidia Thorpe. He's also facing criticism from Labor, while allegations of transphobia within his own Victorian branch continue to cause controversy. 6 News spoke to Bandt from Melbourne.
Bandt, welcome back to 6 News.
Thanks for having me.
Good to have you here again. So look, you've been pushing Labor a lot recently on a number of key things, namely the housing bill. You wanted to see some improvements there, but also just generally you don't want any new coal and gas. I mean, you've been pushing for that for a long time. Can I ask, do you think they're actually going to listen to you?
Well, the scientists, the UN Secretary General, our Pacific Island neighbours, the International Energy Agency that represents all of the energy producers around the world are all saying that the only way to meet climate goals is to stop opening coal and gas mines. It's not just us that are saying this. We haven't just got the science on side, we've actually got people on side as well. 66% of people aged between 18 to 34 don't want Australia to open new coal and gas mines, and it's 57% of the population generally. So we've got the science on our side, we've got the people on our side, and Labor will be hearing this message not just from us, but from the whole world. And that's why I think that their position of saying, Labor's position of saying that they want to keep opening coal and gas mines in the middle of a climate crisis is ultimately untenable. Barack Obama stopped coal exploration on federal lands. I mean, this is people are starting to listen to the science around the world, and Labor's continual expansion of coal and gas is ultimately untenable, especially if they want to host a climate summit here. I mean, how are they going to justify to the rest of the world they want people to come to Australia for a climate summit where the government is actively making the climate crisis worse by opening new coal and gas?
Yeah, and just on the other thing, which is of course that that housing bill, you did face a bit of criticism from Labor MPs. I mean, it was spoken about on the floor, it was spoken about on social media that you're, letting perfect be the enemy of the good. What do you say to that?
Labor's housing plan makes the crisis worse, sees the crisis get worse. And at the end, if Labor's housing plan is implemented, then that housing waiting list for social housing and affordable housing will be longer at the end than it is now. And there's nothing in it for renters. And it locks in a real term funding cut to the amount going on housing. And some years, they're not spending $10 billion on housing. They're taking that money, putting it essentially in gambling on the stock market. And if the future fund doesn't return any investment in a year, there will be no spending on housing at all. So we've been very clear. We're willing to work with the government in good faith and to see legislation passed that makes the problem better, not worse, like that tries to fix the problem. That's what we're interested in. Instead of talking with us, Labor pushed through a vote in Parliament. I mean, I think people can see through what Labor's trying to do. We're in a massive rental crisis where rents are going up 7 times faster than wages, and reports out today suggest that they're going to go up even more. People are really feeling the pain, and they want solutions that are going to make the problem better, and they're not getting it from the government. And I know the government loves their little memes, and they're very quick to sort of get to put those out on socials and so on. But I think it's falling pretty flat because people look at what the government's actually got on offer and realise they're not treating the housing crisis with the attention it deserves. I mean, they pulled together ministers from all around the country and pulled Parliament back for a day at the end of last year and got state governments to legislate when they wanted to on energy. Like, where's the urgency about housing and the massive rental and mortgage crisis that people are facing at the moment? So Labor can try that line on all they like, but I think people are seeing through it.
Right. Now, something else that continues to make headlines was, of course, Lidia Thorpe's decision to leave your party. When she announced that, she said she couldn't properly represent the Black sovereignty movement within the Greens. Why do you think that was?
Look, she can speak for herself on that. Obviously, that's not the outcome that I wanted. And I made it clear to Senator Thorpe that she had the right under our constitution, of course, that she is able to vote differently from the remainder of the party on, say, the question of voice to Parliament, and also that she could continue being our First Nations spokesperson. She chose to go a different way. Obviously, we wish she hadn't done that, but she's done that, and so now my job as leader of the Greens is to deal with the cards as they've fallen, I guess, and to now she'll be sitting on the crossbench, and it's my job to have a good and respectful working relationship with her. She left the party with a lot of respect from a lot of people in the party, and she was a strong fighter for her people. I did, to come back to your question, I certainly felt that within the Greens there was a place for her, including to continue to advocate for the issues that matter to her, and in fact matter to many in the party and to the party itself. She's obviously taken a different course, and so now we've got the Senate the way it is. The Greens are still in balance of power. It doesn't fundamentally change the position of the Senate. The government still needs the Greens. Anytime the coalition opposes anything, the government has always had to get an extra vote, and now sometimes they might have to get an extra 2 votes to get their legislation through. But the Greens remain in a very central and strong position in balance of power in the Senate.
That is true. I mean, going from 12 to 11 is not a major increase in the decrease in the grand scheme of things. But her views on the Voice pretty well known even before she announced that a few weeks ago. Was that view, in your view, respected by the entire party room, that she maybe wasn't wanting to go with the Voice before treaty? I mean, you do call for truth treaty Voice yourselves.
We to be clear, the Greens' position is that, and we took this to the election, we're very clear on it, is that we want to see progress on all elements of the statement from the heart. And also, if our policy is that we think that we'll get First Nations justice in this country by telling the truth about the history of violence and dispossession, and also striking a treaty there with our First Nations people. They're going to be essential components of getting justice for First Nations people in this country. And our policy is and remains that we would prefer to see those processes of truth and treaty come first, because then we'd be going forward as equals, I guess, between with a treaty with our First Nations people. The government's got a different view that it wants to take, but all the way through the discussions that we had with the government, they were issues, the issues that we were raising with the government were issues that weren't just of concern to Senator Thorpe, they were of concern to the whole party room, namely, what does the government's approach mean for questions of sovereignty? We wanted to be sure that the government wasn't going to put the questions of truth and treaty on the back burner, that they were committed to implementing that in full, that they would take steps towards progressing that. And during the discussions that we had with the government, and to give credit, part of this is due to Senator Thorpe, who was part of those discussions with the government for us. We managed to get some progress and some commitment from the government on those areas that we were concerned about, including sovereignty and progress on treaty. And those were obviously relevant things for us when we were coming to the decision about how to vote. So those, I think in that respect, those issues that were being pushed about sovereignty and about treaty weren't just issues that were held by one senator, they were held by the whole party room, and we got some progress on those.
Right. The Greens First Nation Network, so members of your own party, I mean, they've said themselves they do not agree with being forced into what they've called the racist constitution. They, again, want treaty before voice, as you've kind of outlined there. With that view from them that they don't agree with this, with the voice here, why is it then that you are supporting it?
So we had a lot of consultation with with all the elements of our party, including our First Nations network conveners, before we came to the decision that we did. And I would think in the rough and tumble of that period, there were a variety of things that were reported, and I guess I would say that I feel very strongly about that we spoke to and listened to all elements of our party, including our First Nations network, and they were an important part of the decision that we made. And I understand that there will be some people who may have Lydia's view, but in terms of the processes that we went through within our party, including hearing from our First Nations network, and again, if you sort of go back and have a look at actually what was reported about the discussions that took place in the consultation that we had, I think you'll see we went through a pretty good and strong process, and I think we have a very strong and good First Nations network within our party that is going to continue to have a really key role in our campaign during the course of the referendum, but also ensuring that treaty and truth remain on not only on the government's agenda, but the things that the government has publicly committed to do, that they will do.
Right. Moving on to some other things now. You were at World Pride over the weekend, and a few people have pointed this out. You had a shirt, trans rights are human rights. It goes without saying, though, non-negotiable, I should say, but it goes without saying there have been some allegations of transphobia within your own branch, the Vic Greens. Do those concern you?
Look, we've got a very clear party position, a very clear federal position. Trans rights are non-negotiable, and I think our policy that we took to the election is one that I'm firmly committed to and that we're going to implement. And similarly, within the Victorian Party, there's a very clear policy, and there's not, as far as I'm aware, any suggestions from anyone that is going to be changed. And so, look, in a big party like ours, you may have some people say some things, but what matters at the end of the day is what is the party's policy and what is it that the members of parliament will do. And on that, we are crystal clear. Trans rights are non-negotiable. It's a policy that we've got federally that I feel very, very proud of. And we're going to continue to implement that. And at the Victorian level, all of our MPs are going to continue to advance our very strong policy there as well.
But does it concern you, though, that there, may be, as some have alleged online, that, people are going against that? It's been widely reported there have been various allegations. I know Senator Janet Rice, she has previously addressed this. But, is it a problem? Would you like to see action taken on people who may not be going on with such a, as you seem to have put it, a very critical policy and platform that trans rights are non-negotiable within your party?
Well, yeah, look, my understanding is that at the Victorian level, the party has set up a process to work through any issues that are being raised within the Victorian level. And I'm, of course, the federal leader, so I'll comment on what is happening federally. But again, I'll come back to the point that what matters is what is the party's policy and what are the MPs going to vote for. And on that, we are crystal clear and we are united. And I think you will find in the Greens a very strong and unequivocal commitment that the members of parliament are going to vote for trans rights and against transphobia every single time. And I think our record in parliament bears that out.
Right. Now, just on another thing, last time we spoke, we were talking about what you'd like to see in the year ahead in 2022. Obviously, electorally, pretty good year for you guys. Picked up a bunch of seats federally. You've also done really well in the Victorian state election, improving your position in the upper house notably. Do you think this kind of success nationwide can be sustained, or is your party starting to reach its peak here, like some might say other minor parties have, namely the Democrats?
Look, I think it can be sustained, and there's a couple of things underpinning our approach. We're offering not only an alternative on climate, which is becoming a clearer and more pressing issue for people in Australia and around the world, as the fires and the floods and droughts hit. We're the only ones saying stop opening coal and gas. We're the only ones prepared to take a position on that. But also, I think critically, we're now offering an economic alternative that I think people can hear and see. And we're in a cost of living crisis that's part of a broader inequality crisis in this country. And we've got inflation really hurting people and rents going up 7 times faster than wages. But meanwhile, corporate profits are starting to go through the roof. And we're seeing that with record profits from Woodside out today, profiteering off a war and off the climate crisis, from Qantas, from the Commonwealth Bank. And what's becoming clearer is that we're the only ones who are saying it's time for the big corporations and billionaires to pay their fair share of tax and put that money into things that will make people's lives better and help you deal with the cost of living crisis, like getting dental into Medicare. And that message that we took at the election, I think is starting to resonate even more strongly. And we spoke about renters before. I mean, no one from the government or the opposition is talking about renters. Like, where's their plan to deal with the massive rent increases that people are facing? And we're the only ones talking about that as well. And I think, unfortunately, it looks like these crises are getting worse, and the government is largely washing their hands of a lot of it and refusing to take on the big corporations, refusing to do things that would make everyday people's lives better. And I think as we continue to put that economic alternative and that climate alternative in front of people, you're going to see support for the Greens grow.
And just finally, it's something that federally, state Greens candidates, MPs often talk about, which is wanting to potentially have some kind of minority government. You, of course, were part of the minority Gillard government back in 2010. But, Labor, they've managed to get in with a majority federally, though slim. Do you think it's actually going to be possible to ever get into that position? Because even if, Labor maybe lost, a few seats at the next election, there's a wide range of crossbenchers and they seem pretty opposed to working with you guys.
Look, ultimately, that's going to be in the people's hands, and it may well be in the hands of others, as you say. It'll obviously be determined on how the numbers fall after the election. Of course, in the ACT, we've got Greens in government and working with Labor as we speak. We've got ministers there in the ACT, and that's part of the reason that you see the ACT taking such strong action on climate, for example. But look, that's ultimately going to be up to the people as to what kind of parliament they choose. But you're right that was the outcome from the election. But let's not forget that Labor and the coalition's vote went backwards at the election, and we've got an electoral system that can tend to mask what is actually happening with votes. And Labor's vote went backwards. Yes, they won an extra few seats to get them just over the line, but their vote went backwards, and the coalition's vote went backwards. And the parties and independents votes that went up were the ones that said, yeah, we're going to take action on coal and gas. And we want to see real action on cost of living, and let's make these big corporations start paying a tax, especially windfall tax, if they're making obscene profits off the back of the dictator's invasion of the Ukraine. So I think that trend, and again, you saw it at the Victorian election as well, where the Greens' representation in Parliament grew substantially, and Labor's vote, again, they crept over the line, but their vote collapsed. And there's only so far that can keep happening, that trend, as people look to parties like the Greens, because we're fighting for people and we're taking on the real issues that matter. I think there's every chance you're going to see that grow. And we've made our position clear. We've laid out our position and just said, look, very clearly, we don't want to see the Conservatives, the Liberals in power. We are prepared to work with Labor and with independents to tackle the big issues that we're facing. And we're approaching that in a spirit of goodwill. And then I guess it would be up to the others if that's what happens after the next election.
Bit more than crept over the line in Victoria, surely. I mean, they had a huge majority, about as big as 2018.
Sure. Well, but my point is that a substantial collapse in the primary vote, and this is, I think, something that is the other parties, they will do their best when they're in Parliament to puff their chests up and say that they have a majority government, but you've got less than a third of the country having voted for them, and that's an extraordinary situation to be in, where you're in government but less than a third of the country voted for you. And that trend you're starting to see across the whole country as more and more people look to parties like the Greens. And I think one of the lessons, I think, from that the government needs to draw is that they need to understand that when two-thirds of the country did not vote for the government, and especially when they're federally in the Senate, where the Labor does not have a majority in the Senate, if they want to pass laws, they're going to need to work with the Greens. And we're up for working with the government to tackle the big crises that we're facing. But it's up to the government to understand that they don't have a majority in both houses of Parliament. Less than a third of the country voted for them, and if they want to get things done, they're going to have to work with others, including the Greens.
Really interesting to chat again. A lot's happened since we last spoke. Really appreciate your time, and hope to be able to catch up again in the future. Adam Bandt, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me on.
Greens leader Adam Bandt. A reminder, for the latest headlines on Breaking News 24/7, as well as more editions of Uncensored, head to our website, SIXNewsAU.com, or follow us on social media. Just search 6NewsAU to find us. I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Thanks for tuning in.
when big news breaks.
It pains me to announce that I have no option